Uprising Academy, they lay down the shatter, let the bodies hit the floor. Uprising Academy at 95%.
Right now with Hydra building up to this Vera barrage so quickly.
Oh,
and asking.
double kill in the back with the pulse bomb from the high ground. Aerial assault with that mine.
Impact se escucha debajo gritar campeón a Sky Foxes.
Holy cow.
And after 42 consecutive losses, the Shanghai Dragons get their first win.
8 teams enter this weekend.
Oh no, Reinhardt, what are you doing?
We got a clip with minimal information. It's time to break it down. Speed, 25%. Go. Figure out what this man's SR is.
Keep fighting until it's for sure lost.
Winnable!
Good evening, esports fans, and welcome to the final day of NA Contenders Trials. We're coming at you live with one game this evening. Karasuno playing up against Revival for that last Contender Trial spot in the group. I'm Big Hungry Phil, and joining me on the cast today is Thibbledork. Thibble, how's it going, and what have we got to look forward to today?
Boy, howdy, do we have a lot to look forward to. It's been a very interesting day here in Tier 2.5, or whatever the heck you want to call it. We have some
an
interesting
eventful couple of hours, hasn't it?
Yes, we are hitting that Tier 2 clown fiesta, and frankly, those are the most interesting parts of my day, my week, my month. I mean, I love days like this, even if it's just utter chaos. This game in particular has some very interesting math attached to it. There's still one spot up for grabs here in this group to make it up into contenders, and this match has a part to play in that. The math of which we will get to here in just a moment, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. If you've got pen and paper ready to follow us through this mathematics, it's necessary because there is a route here for both of these teams individually to pick up their second place in Contenders Trials at the end of 5 days and secure their position in Contenders. For Karasuno, it's easy. They've got a comparatively light task here. For Revival, it's much more sort of mountain range kind of way in what needs to happen for them to make it through. Karasuno, they win one map here. Even if they lose the rest of the series, that's it. They're guaranteed contenders. For Revival, though, it's a little bit harder.
Yes, sorry, I didn't hear my name for that transition. Goodness me. So Revival need to 3-0 here to get in. It's really just as simple as that. If they win, their map differential overtakes Karasuno's by 1, and they are in. Unless Malibu also 3-0, in which case their map differential will overtake Revival's by 1, in which case they are in. So it's not entirely in Revival's hands. They don't fully control their own destiny, but 3-0ing here would certainly do them quite a few favors. So they are looking to dominate. They have no choice, because if Karasuno get a single map, they have ruined the hopes of both Revival and Malibu.
The additional wrinkle in this, of course, is that Malibu's game today is against Noble, and Noble, sadly, have just not been on top form. They've yet to get a win on the board. I believe they've only got 2 map wins over the course of the previous 4 days of Contenders. So Malibu getting the 3-0 here over Noble seems very, very likely, unless Noble have somehow managed a real step change in quality since their game yesterday. So Revival, even if they put out the win of a lifetime here, it's still not guaranteed, and you've really got to feel for them. It can't be fun not being in control of your own destiny here.
Oh yeah, I mean it's always a rough situation, right? You just have to sit there and watch and hope, right? Everyone here is crossing their fingers. But Noble can play spoiler for Malibu and then open things up for Revival, and Karasuno can play spoiler for everybody. I mean, we could, within the next 10 or 15 minutes, have to throw all this math out of the window if Karasuno take map 1. So it's a mess. it's a classic tier 2 mess, and I frankly couldn't ask for anything more on a day like today.
Yeah. One thing that we were supposed to mention at the top of the broadcast, those of you wondering why we're only talking about the number 2 place here, is because that number 1 spot is guaranteed in this group, but we have had 3 teams sadly disqualified from Contenders trials at the final minute, and so there is that little bit more to play for, particularly over in the other group. But Thib, looks like we are getting ready to go into our first map of today, and it's going to be Busan, and looking to start here on Mecha Base. And we've seen a lot of a very particular type of composition, the double shield Genji poke. We likely to see any wrinkles to that today?
I mean, I would love to. We saw some coming out from Triumph the other day, swapping to a dive of sorts, a Winston Wrecking Ball sort of dive. Something like that could be interesting and effective. Maybe not here, where these choke points really favor the cover a shield can provide you, but maybe on a submap like Sanctuary, if they end up hitting there, or other maps like Route 66 or something like that. So far, though, I'm expecting the bog standard.
Yeah, and in fact, we've got both teams coming in rotating through the same pathing here. Asking and Aspire both got TNTs in there of varying strength, and Aspire already at 50% and forcing the Immortality Field out from Drake incredibly early, who gets him out to Amplification Matrix in less than a minute before the point is even unlocked. It opens up a world of damage there onto Revival, and Karasuno looking for the early flip.
I mean, in effective time, you were really looking at about 7 or 8 seconds to build that ultimate. I think just the sheer cleave damage from the dynamite actually fed that ultimate very well. I have no clue how that came through that fast, but I don't think you're complaining for these guys. That is a fantastic way to start this first round. Now, though, they're a little behind on other ultimates, except perhaps the rally from Gustav, so they'll have to see if they can hold the line.
It's going to be Laya opening things up here for Revival as they take the low ground rotation. But Karasuno, they just work their way back around onto the high ground and avoid some of those lines of sight. They are going to have to deal with that pesky 7th man there in the form of the Bob. But Whoop's going to go down, bringing it back down to a classic 6-on-6 here. Going to see Laya caught out in the low ground and Fincy on the hunt for him, rotating back into the point. Now needs to watch out for Salted's Gravitic Flux that doesn't find too much value here. And Sam is finding shuriken after shuriken after shuriken. And unfortunately for Fincy, he's finding the rock to the face, interrupting that Gravitic Flux. This is an incredibly messy fight, and Revival have managed to flip here, but it looks like Karasuno are coming up with the kills, and they will flip this back again.
Yeah, crazy back and forth there through most of that fight. Neither Gravitic Flux getting any sort of value, but ultimately the focus fire on shields from Karasuno is really what's been winning them these fights overall. I mean, the barriers just are not lasting for Revival, and in a double barrier meta, how you can make those work and get value for you is kind of everything.
Well, this is going to be an early start out here for Karasuno as they pop in 2 ults. Immortality Field down. Sam now out of range of the Supercharger and out of range of healing for the rest of his team, but has now done the damage. The Spire throws the Bob up into the choke between the Immortality Field and the shielding. It's going to be not much of a stay of execution there for Aspire, but now it's Wubbenmoopy with the chance to pop in the opposite combo here. Fincy goes down early. We're caught out a little bit far away from the rest of Karasuno and not able to find the picks here. Sting picks coming back through now for Revival, and this is turning Fibble into a real seesaw of a map.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's back and forth every time, it feels like. A great disengage there from Revival to kind of hold off, and then a great re-engage as well to try and get value off the last end of Wub's blade. And, I mean, he was almost more effective without it than with it. I mean, he's just been farming in the neutral, which is why this shield pressure is so back and forth and so intense. Both teams are really getting a good handle on this poke sort of meta and how to get the most out of that damage.
Early and Matrix is going to be dodged by Karasuno as they drop to the low ground, and instead Salt is going to take a bit of flak. Moopy down now to Asking, but Aspire keeps the high ground, has a line in onto Sam and knocks him out, but it might now be the numbers advantage here for Karasuno, unless Aspire can keep finding heads. Asking's now going toe-to-toe with Aspire, but both of those guys are going to back off for now, and it's going to be Karasuno remaining in control.
Interesting swap to the Wrecking Ball here. I don't really know what that was going for, maybe for a quick recontest, but they are approaching last fight territory here.
Yeah, might have been a little bit too quick coming through on the Wrecking Ball there, and now Fincy, just about getting that spin cycle set up, will get rocked out of it, but has high ground to find a bit more value. There's Salty with the Flux, won't find much, has done the damage there to allow Whoop to get J. Karu. Sam now looking for another blade to round this one out, and Moopy's going to go off the side of his own accord on this one. It's going to be Wub with the blade first, deals with the immortality field, but still looking. But Karasuno, they just wisely, they run from the blade, so there's no value from it. Aspire, less quick off the mark on that one. Sam brings out the blade and chops him down, and it's 159 on Mecha Base.
I feel that was a very neutral focused fight. With a couple exceptions, there were not a lot of ultimates that really altered the course of that round. I would say that the Matrixes coming out were very impactful, but only one Gravitic Flux really got value out of the 3 or 4 I think were given access to over the course of the round. And then the Dragon Blades never felt like they were getting more than 1 or 2 kills at most. Both teams doing a really good job of kiting and rotating away from those impactful ultimates and really making this fight all about who can click just that much better. On Sanctuary, though, it looks like we're getting a Widow duel, and that might continue here. Very mechanically focused and very rotationally focused approaches from both of these teams.
It's going to be a lot down here to who can get into position first, and Gustav with a swap over briefly onto the Lucio might have done just enough here for Asking to take that initial position, but it's going to be Aspire here that A, finds some damage, but B, receives a lot of damage themselves. Aspire down, and it's a 5v6 now in favor of Karasuno. There needs to be a nice, meaty punch back here from Revival to secure the 5v5 to keep themselves in this. They've played very passively here and allowed Karasuno to get the early cap.
Yeah, Karasuno here playing some 4D chess, understanding that the Widow duel is going to be happening, so why not throw in a Wrecking Ball, a sheer agent of chaos and mayhem to really disrupt the snipers. That said, Finzi not doing a great job as Aspire goes down.
And man, Aspire opens things right up here. They played it slow, but they gave Aspire a chance to come back in, and Aspire was the difference maker. It's going to be Revival actually coming through with that early cap. They interrupted Karasuno mid-cap.
Right. Finzi really needs to be working overtime here, because if he's not on top of Aspire at all times, he's going to do work. He's one of the best hit scans, I would say, in Contenders Trials right now, and he's not afraid to flex that sort of muscle.
Not at all. In fact, he's flexed so much muscle that he's got an incredibly beefy infra site up already that's going to make Asking's job even harder against a Widowmaker of this caliber. Holt's going to drag Aspire back into the line of fight, but Asking can't get a lock on quickly enough. He gets caught out in mid, and Asking down. Aspire with the second here. Salty and the rest surge forward with a numbers advantage, looking to get that second pick, and we are getting close to the halfway mark here for Revival.
If I'm Karasuno, I really just try and use whatever you got in this next fight and then swap it up if it's still not working. I don't think the disruption given by Finzi is enough to keep Aspire from doing his job, and ultimately the Sigma might get you a little more value with that extra shield and the sheer mid-range pressure that he can provide that a Wrecking Ball cannot. Aspire has just been too effective in his role, too able to get away from this peel coming out from Wub and Finzi.
Oh no! It's a 1-for-1 trade, but one was an ultimate, one was a melee pickoff. Wub still in the back and hunting. We're going to fire a lot into the adaptive shields, and it's starting to look a lot more favorable here for Karasuno. The minefield caused a lot of confusion. It took up a lot of space, and Karasuno saw that opening and surged in towards it, and we will see the cap here. But as Revival are at 86% here, it's kind of last fight territory, and Karasuno need to play the rest of this map perfectly.
Right, Karasuno cannot give anything up here. Finzi is really going to have to surprise them, I think, on an angle, but Aspen already knows what's up, and Salty is quick to follow her behind. This pick still isn't really seeing to me. It's getting some work done, and yes, they were able to cap, and they'll have some ultimates to help with this, but Aspire is still going to get so much work done against this composition. They have to be so careful with how they approach this, and Revival have plenty of time to decide their angle.
Infosight from Asking is going to cause Revival just a moment's hesitation as they wait for that to come offline and avoid being picked out of the air. But defensive positioning here for Asking is incredibly favorable. We're going to be relying on Aspire here to take an off angle and try and out-snipe Asking. And alternatively, Salty, with a crime against the laws of physics, lifts a few people up into the air and is looking to get the follow-up pick onto J-Caro, but can't quite find the closeout damage. Will eventually go down as the amplification matrix is committed by Drake. They lose the point here, and it's definitely last fight territory. Karasuno need to get back in and cap if they want to avoid going to a third map on Busan.
Yeah, I mean, crazy back and forth here, but ultimately the ultimates coming out from Karasuno are not getting the amount of value they really need to against the sheer neutral power provided by
There's the pulse bomb.
Competition.
Fortify kept Mopi alive through that one. Woob's going to have one of their own, and Jkaru comes back in on the Winston and goes right back out again on the Winston. It's very back and forth for now, but Revival just need to keep on grinding this one out. They've not got the numbers advantage, but they have position. They've got the defensive lineup here. Spire with an angle deals with Asking. It was a beautiful read. He had no reason to suspect that Asking was going to be there in the first place. They've secured the numbers advantage, and now it's a case of dealing with a last couple of recon tests coming through for Karasuno, and they're going to cap this one and take us to a third map.
There's a lot to say about how Karasuno's composition didn't necessarily prepare them to deal with the Widow duel as much as I think they thought it was going to. At the same time, I would also say that the Widow duel in general was pretty clearly outdone on Aspire's part. He was consistently ahead in finding those aggressive angles and knowing where to be to catch Asking off guard. And he never really seemed prepared for that. There were two separate instances there where we saw Aspire had Infrasight online and Asking jumped into an open sightline, which makes you incredibly predictable for the enemy Widow if they can see you through walls. So it didn't seem like Asking was really prepared or paying attention, perhaps, to what Aspire was bringing to the table. But that was a fatal mistake on that round, and now it's 1-1.
It's 1-1, and we've got a big old swap up here from Revival. They're going to be going with the Wrecking Ball Zarya composition. Murphy with the first big run through and a little bit of charge there for Salty. Takes a lot of damage, has to proc the adaptive shield, and only just barely gets out with his life, and he's not out of the woods yet. A lot of pressure coming Murphy's way, and he's not in a position to rotate and get into the line of fire of the healing from his team. Woob's going to get picked off here, so it's a 5v6 already in favor of Karasuno. They take up the defensive positioning, and as soon as you get these static tanks lined up on the point and ready to go, it's going to be real hard to dislodge them. There's the flip, and Revival still throwing resources at this. They don't think they're out of this fight just yet. Karasuno have a couple of words to think about that, and that's great from Vinci, using there the kinetic grass to protect the immortality build, to buy them a couple more seconds. Amplification Matrix is going to be out here, but it's a weird angle. They're not really going to be able to get too much through this, and Revival still going here. Nice minefield. The grab comes through, but doesn't drag anybody into the minefield, which is really what that combo was looking for. And this has all been a hiding to nothing for Revival. A valiant effort, but it's just not working out for them. Sam with the blade.
No. Go ahead. Sorry.
Might not even have been needed there. This was it was a one fight. It's just about getting rid of the snaggers. They were in control. They might want that back because Woob's going to have one of their own on the next fight.
Right. The composition Revival's running, or was running, as Moopy swaps over to the Winston, is one of those that you don't necessarily need to be 6v6 to have a shot in, provided you can get value out of your ultimates. That said, the Minefield and the Graviton did not get much done. Now, though, the DPS ultimates could be the thing that turns the tide, but they'll have to watch out for the Supercharger, the Amplification Matrix, and the Bob coming out from Karasuno.
That was dirty from Asking on the high ground. Woob cut down in his prime, and Revival are going to be forced to back out on this one. But Scheme's got other plans. The Bob goes in, and he blind fires into the choke and finds two. And we're at 72% here for Karasuno. They are less than a quarter of the map away from securing their Contenders position.
I mean, yeah, it's looking to be in a pretty favorable spot for them. They're getting the picks, they're applying the pressure where they need to, but that Bob was maybe a little more ambitious. I might have kept that if I were them.
Oh,
That's
wow.
Asking making me eat my words here, because he is just getting pick after pick after pick.
Yeah. Hey, Fibble, you know when you said that the hit scan duel was going the way of a spy? I think Asking might have heard that one, and he decided to step up. Yeah. Still, DPS ults available. We've got to get the tag in here. Will come through at the final second as Moopy finds the position here. Pulse bomb out, and it does get rid of Drake. It's a nice opener, and they've still got Woob's blade here ready to go. He's not been given an opportunity to use it just yet, and they lose Aspen. There's going to be the flux out from Fincy as well. He gets rid of Moopy, and the blade might have been held on just a little bit too long here. It will receive the nano, but that has got to be it. There's just nothing left from Revival, and Karasuno take this 2-1, and they've got to feel pretty good about that. They can relax for the rest of this series.
That's right. I mean, like I said, just throw all that math we were talking about out the window. It straight up doesn't matter anymore. I respect what Revival were trying to do with that composition, and they certainly tried to, or needed to try and pull out something a little weird to throw off Karasuno and keep their hopes alive in this fight. That said, I don't think they were ever really able to execute their composition's win conditions there. They were focused, the primary focus for them was to stack a bunch of ultimates and use that advantage to really overcome the like coalesced nature of the composition Karasuno were running. That said, they were never able to disrupt them enough to really get the value out of the heroes like the Wrecking Ball or the Zarya or anything like that. And frankly, they didn't even have good windows to use their DPS ultimates, which charged so quickly, but were not used that often there on downtown. So ultimately, Karasuno just kind of outpacing them and understanding that the composition they were running is meta for a reason, and it will give them certain advantages over Revival's sort of composition if they play it right. They ran that very effectively in counter of what Revival were trying to do, and there was really no answer at that point.
You do kind of wonder there if Revival are now looking at that final map and going, maybe if we'd run the double shield here, we would have had a little more luck. Maybe if we'd have gone for an Ashe or a Widowmaker, where we saw Aspire was really finding a lot of value on the previous map, you could have done that a little bit differently. But the map is now done. Your odds of making Contenders gone along with it, and now you're in the rest of the series really just to see what pride you can salvage from the remainder of your Contenders Trials day. And moving on to the next map, we're going to be looking at Hollywood here, Thibble. So I think we're probably going to be seeing more of the same here. I don't know if the Wrecking Ball Zarya really finds the same level of value on this map.
Sure. I mean, we could certainly see an easy return to, air quotes, the meta here. But this is also, if I may be so bold as to predict, a chance for both teams to let their hair down a bit. There's no seeding in stake anymore. There's no chance of making Contenders for Revival. This could get a little weird, and I'm always a fan of that. That said, this could also be a let's give them our best showing on the way out. Let's show that we're not going to go quietly. Let's make a game of this at the very least. But I'm always a fan of chaos, and this day has certainly brought us some more. So I'm very curious to see what we roll out with on Hollywood. Bog standard, totally possible, but please give me something interesting. Give me like a Junkrat. That's kind of what I'm hoping for.
I mean, look, you're saying Junkrat. I'm thinking let's try and just on the fly from both of these teams work out what you would need to build around a Torbjorn Doomfist comp. I think that's going to be some good theory crafting here.
Okay.
So if we can relay that to the teams and see what they think about that, we'll maybe get them in on that. Looks like we might just be having a small delay here whilst we rebuild the lobby ready to go for the next game. So a little bit of a delay between us and Hollywood and finding out whether or not they're likely to give us that level of craziness. Really got a feel for Revival though. They've had such a good run through both Open Division and Contenders Trials to fall at the last hurdle here. Even given all of the craziness that we've seen so far today, it's got to be a little bit of a kick, really.
Sure. I mean, falling down at a moment like this where Triumph was in your grasp, not the team, the actual concept of Triumph.
Different group.
Yes, right. I think that's always going to hurt, but to be a true competitor means to fail every now and then and to understand what that failure can show you and what you can learn from it. So if I'm Revival, obviously I'm not like, oh, great, we have tons of material to review now that we've lost. But the only opportunity at this point that you can get from it is the opportunity to learn something new for next time. So when Trials, what's next month? September rolls around? God, time is so fake to me.
I think it's March. It's been March for like 4 months now, I think.
I really try not to think about it. If I see a calendar, I just turn my head really fast. It's very stressful. Whenever the next round of Trials comes around, I think Revival will have a fantastic shot, as they did this round, I think, to make it back up into Contenders. They've always been a team that's been on that bubble sometimes, but has consistently, to me, looked like a Contenders caliber team that just needs a couple extra ironing outs to really roll their smooth brains into that next level of play. So don't give up if you're Revival, obviously. I don't think this is like a blow up the roster and move on. This team is fantastic. They just need to polish things up a little bit, go back to the war room, talk it out with your coaches and everything, figure out what went wrong and how you can fix it for the next one. That said, the meta could also look very different next time around. Genji was this like insane god tier carry for a bit, and now he's certainly important, but not the absolute linchpin that he was. Shifts like that over time, if anything from the experimental card currently goes meta, we could be looking at a very different set of contenders in a month from now. So there are always opportunities here. So if I'm Revival, don't give up hope. Go out swinging, prep for next time, come back even stronger than ever. And if I'm Karasuno, hey man, toward Doomfist the rest of the way.
Top Doomfist,
You're
yeah.
in.
Let's
Let
see it.
happen.
Let's roll with it. I think the other thing that's worth considering here is like let's just for a minute think about the relative history and pedigree of these two teams. Actually, the last time you and I got to work together was a Vita Ramen Revival game as well, and we touched upon the fact that Revival is the son, the descendant of that original Mayhem Academy roster that was released a year or so ago. Obviously, a lot of changes since then. Still the core identity, even though we've got a name change and a new sponsor. So, a team with a story behind it, a team with a history behind it. Whereas for Karasuno, this is a team that has been forged deep in the fires of Open Division. And yes, they've attracted some top talent here. Notably, they've got Fincy, ex-Overwatch League player here. But Karasuno as an org, a new entity, a new rising star in the world of Tier 2 and Tier 3 Overwatch. And it's interesting to me that we're getting to see like almost an old guard up against an up-and-coming star here.
Right. There's tons of those dynamics coming out lately, and you really love to see it. I would say Karasuno is our next generation of second wind style teams. And Revival are certainly that old guard, like you said. So it makes for a fantastic storyline.
It does, and that's a nice opening there from Moopy. Gustav's going to go down here, so Karasuno not in a position to aggress in just yet, but it's an equalizer from Asking, winning out the high ground versus low ground duel when it should have been heavily against him on that one. And now there's not a lot more damage coming out from Revival onto Karasuno, so they can start to press the advantage here. See Sam up onto the high ground there on the Genji to try and challenge his position as Fincy climbing the stairs, working those thighs, getting up there, taking the fight to Revival. Finds a couple of shots in, has to play this a little bit cagily here. Doesn't want to get in range of the stun from the Brick Shield, but gets in range to do the damage to allow Sam to get in with the cleanup. And this is looking to be a speedy cap here for Karasuno on point A, Hollywood.
Right. I mean, besides that first pick, clean as you like it coming out from Karasuno. And once they got that equalizer to start things out, the spawn advantage is hugely in favor. I'm not a fan of this amplification matrix coming out from Liar. Bit of a panic play. Perhaps he thought he could maybe clutch that out, or maybe he's going to switch. I frankly don't know. But the cart's rolling now, and I mean, that was as clean as you like from Karasuno. They made great use of the angles on stairs.
The only real benefit is that both Drake and Liar use the amplification matrix, so you're not like you're behind. Wow. Not like you're behind in that ult race, but you are now behind in terms of number of Genjis available for the team as Sam gets sniped out of the air by Aspire. There's a player and a slight ult advantage now for Revival, but it's going to require them to shift up out of Park and start to move their way forward. That's going to be how it starts off. It's a bob fight in the middle of point, everybody, ignoring the useful targets and just trying to take each other there with a bit of focus fire from J. Karu. Aspire's Bob is going to go down, whoop into the back line, and whoop very quickly out of the back line again. Sam with a bigger, better, sharper, faster blade here takes out Aspen, does some of the work to deal with the rest of the team, and Karasuno keep this cart a-rolling forward.
I mean, all the superlative adjectives you could think of really apply to that fight for Karasuno. They got a little more value out of just about everything. The blade obviously was the flashiest there, but getting that initial pick was certainly nothing to sneeze at either. They're actually slightly maintained their advantage here with the Supercharger and both support ultimates. They'll have to see if they can use those to effectively counter out the Gravitic Flux, or if Revival are going to go for a bit of an eco push on their last defense here in Streets.
Well, they need to start getting defensive if they want in on this. Looks like we actually got that flux interrupted there, so that's not going to connect onto anything. And Karasuno are just looking completely unflappable. Unflappable is not even in their dictionary. This payload not stopping even for a second here on Streets.
No, Salty went for the flux, but I believe the only target that he reached was Jekaru, who had used Fortify. So that effectively cancels the ultimate early because he doesn't actually pick anybody up. And from there, it's easy pickings from Karasuno. And now they're just trading out up in this high ground. They're just
Ash on
fighting
Ash.
up there at the ball.
Ash on Ash violence, Genji on Genji violence. When is it going to stop, Thibble? Karasuno still moving up with the payload there, and Fincy playing that classic Sigma off angle, looking for the rock to interrupt something, but won't find it, and is now being chased down by his opposite number. Back on board with Asking, who's going to get dragged back into the line of fire, but as a Bob to get that cart contested, gets the knock up there onto Live, but the Immortality Field's going to keep him alive. But the rest of Revival, they back away from the line of sight of the Immortality Field, and Asking is able to find Liar on the back of that here. And Karasuno, they still want to grind their way through this. The Bob's not going to stand up to that amplification matrix and the consistent fire from J-Karu, and they're keeping this moving forwards.
I feel like Asking is always in the right place when Revival are trying to make a rotation and there's a brief window where he can find a shot in between those shields. It's been hugely valuable for Karasuno so far.
Oh, a couple of big impactful ults on the board here. Fincy and Sam pop theirs. Get a cheeky 4K on the back of that. Liars caught alone by the mini health pack. Couldn't even find the brief sustenance and solace of the miniature health pack. And with 3 minutes 15 on the clock, we've got 0.3 meters left to go. And that is it. No contest coming through. And for a map like Hollywood, that is quite the time bank, Fibble.
That is very, very fast. Not much stopped them, I think, over the course of that entire map. So props to the whole team there. That is really a team effort getting them through. Plenty of picks coming out from Asking, but plenty of good work coming out from Sam, from J-Karu, from Fincy, and from the supports as well. I think that was just a really great example of a well-oiled machine moving through a map they clearly have quite a bit of experience on. Lots of off-angle pushes, lots of understanding of, okay, Revival's going to try and move from here to here. That means that their shields will be down, and if you are here, you'll be able to get a shot. And Asking taking great advantage of that, Sam taking great advantage of that, knowing when to flip on the aggression, get a pick or two, and really just make those openings happen for the rest of his team. Meanwhile, the cart just keeps going. Revival were never able to put forth a proper defense there because they were so pressured to have to move around and stay alive. They could never even think about starting an actual fight.
There's a lot of people that maybe aren't that keen on this double shield meta, but I think there's a really nice part to this that is often overlooked, which is if you could slow this double shield meta down into a turn-based combat system, it starts to look an awful lot like a tactics or a strategy game, and you've really got to keep your head in a swivel to get your head around how that's going to work out. But Thibble, I want to throw back to 5 minutes ago where you were saying, hey, let's get the Junkrat on the field. Sam clearly heard you on this one, and you get your wish.
That is correct. I love this guy. He's winning my MVP for the game no matter what. I'm just going to throw that out there now. I'm not biased or anything, but a Junkrat on the field, frankly, is also just a good pick. I mean, downrange damage from this high ground.
Yeah, it makes this a very difficult choke to get through for Revival on top of the spam damage coming in from Asking. And that's exactly what you want if you're trying to assert dominance on the Rat. Dolty down to the concussive mine. TNT comes through, catches a Spire here as well. And the burn will come through and take Rupee out of it. Revival look to press forward, but Asking gets caught out in that rotation. So it's a 5v6 for Revival if they can take it quick.
So the difference, those fights started very similar ways, but the difference is that the defending team here, Karasuno, when they got that first pick, they didn't just hang out and wait for someone to get their head popped off. They dropped down and pressed their advantage. That has extended their defense here another 30 or 40 seconds, and they're setting up great for a second defense as well.
And the other aspect is we've got a couple of tanks here with a lot more ult charge in the bank ready to go on the back of that little bit of push. We'll see Sam catapult himself into the back line, ready to just do the old peek and spam there into the security room. Looking for a peek and spam on the other angle here, and already finding a huge amount of damage. Won't find the pick, and instead it's going to be Drake and Sam both down kind of quickly here. Ult's about to come on board for Karasuno, but the table is slowly falling over as the legs are pulled out from under it, and they're really going to want to save as many of these ults as they can for the next defense.
This was certainly not the only thing to go wrong for Karasuno, but that miss onto Liar from Asking was really key. If he had hit that shot when Liar got pulled up by the halt from J-Karu, that's no cleave healing from the Baptiste, and that's no amplification matrix for that fight. It could have gone very differently. So he's definitely kicking himself for that miss, but there was more to it than that as well. I think in general, Revival did a good job of understanding their advantage and pushing forward.
And as we talk about advantages, there's a big one. Salty taken off the table and asking, converting that one-man advantage into a two-man advantage with a Bob that could not be more beautifully placed to trap Revival closer towards their spawn and allow Karasuno to retake so much space that the payload almost goes back to its starting position.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic push there. You very rarely see a re-engage this early in the game. Asking getting another pick, because why not at this point? Why not do that?
Bob and Flux both thrown in. Immortality Field will save Karasuno. They're going to heal back up as quick as you like. Riptire up over the top. It's over the houses. It's following the Defran spam over the wall path. Won't find much except the Immortality Field. And Aspire gets a quick 2k here with the TNT. Asking refuses to be outdone here. Has got two of their own. And might just have done enough here to allow Karasuno to back off and wait for the recontest to come through.
Yeah, they're giving a little bit of space here, but this is definitely still a pretty solid hold coming out from Karasuno. These Ashes, man, both of them are just like, anything you can do, I can do better. I'll get a headshot kill. I'll kill somebody with dynamite. It's a fantastic matchup to see, and it's keeping this very close here in Street Space.
If Dueling Banjos was game of Overwatch, it would look a lot like the exchanges here between Asking and Aspire. It's going to be Moopy that wants to start off this fight with Supercharger. Should allow Aspire to generate the last bit of ultimate they needed to get that Bob on board. Instead, Sam's going to take them down, and now there's a Flux on the table here from Fincy. Damage has been done, but the Immortality Field keeps them alive through that Bob into the back, looking for the follow-up here, and Wub down below half health here, dueling his opposite number in. Sam inside the saloon. Kills now starting to creep up here for Revival, but it might be a temporary stay of execution as Sam deals with Wub. Salty's going to go for a Flux here. Didn't even manage the one kill as we see J-Karu get the Fortify out of that. Karasuno and Revival both never want to say die on these team fights, Neville.
See, I was talking about both teams letting their hair down, but it is clear that they did not agree with me here. Both of them are determined to fight this out bitterly.
Oh.
It's so back and forth.
There we go. Wub just managed to get Sam on that one, and the DPS between them here from Revival might finally have done enough to open this up for Revival to keep pressing forward. We'll see a late kill come onto Liar, but I still think the numbers are here for Revival, and they're in a position to get back onto the cart and start to move this over towards the end of B.
Look at this swap, though. J-Karu coming back on the Wrecking Ball. They're definitely not going to let this go, even around this next corner towards the doors. This has probably been one of the more contentious Hollywood Street phases I think I've ever seen.
There's certainly been a lot of back and forth on this one. It's not been the quick run through that Revival would have liked. It's not been the slow run through that Karasuno would have liked. And Sam wants to turn the conversation. There's a lot of damage there onto Salty, who's now trapped, but being heavily defended there by Wub to make this a 1v2 that Sam somehow still manages to win here. We are now 3 meters away from this payload completing, and less than a minute on the clock for it to happen here for Revival.
I mean, great peel coming out from Revival to try and provide a little extra healing to Salty. You saw Liar coming around the corner there trying to just do his best, but ultimately Genji just deals a lot of burst damage, and there's not a lot you can do when your healing only does 50 healing per tick, per one of those little grenades that he shoots out or whatever the heck it is. So ultimately, just not quite enough, and I think Sam has been, not quietly, but consistently having a very good game overall here on Genji.
You've got to be looking now at the ults currently available for Revival as Wub deals with Fincy. They're looking to get not quite the full stack, but 5 out of 6 ready to go. They're going to wait out the Bob here before they look to go in and recontest. That's great pressure from Wub. Will get the Immortality Field out, which suddenly makes the Gravitic Flux here from Salty and the Blade here from Wub that much more impactful. But they've got to start pulling the trigger on this now. Wub and Aspire get a quick couple. The minefield does come out here from J-Karu, and deep into overtime, Revival do just enough to secure themselves a street place. But no matter what they do, they ain't matching the time bank that Karasuno managed.
Certainly not, but that was a good kind of heads-up play coming out from Revival, understanding that the Immortality Field coming out really opens the door for them to start pressing Q and moving forward really effectively for once. I feel a lot of the Immortality Fields on both sides have been getting a little too much value. It's very important to understand when it's up and when it's down and what you can do given that status. So good mindfulness there from Revival to let them open that door.
Great positioning there from Aspire. Does get the TNT in over the top. Makes things just that little bit easier for Whoop to start to find value with the blade. And this is looking like we're going to see a cap here as the kills come through in very quick succession. But that payload still just rounding that final corner. Recontest from Karasuno is guaranteed here.
Certainly, and the way this has been going, they're not just going to give it up. This is going to be a fight all the way to the bitter end.
Still pushing on through, no contest coming through just yet. Early Bob from Aspire makes that recontest that little bit trickier. Asking takes the opposite path, and the Bob will reach the point on that one. And Wub is frantically firing round after round of Shuriken into whatever target he can fire, trying to get the kills, trying to generate ult charge here. But as we hit the 8-second mark, they can get the kills, but they're unlikely to make this happen in overtime. No, they just by the skin of their teeth make it in. They're gonna get another crack at this one.
Right, with a minute left, but against a 4 minutes and 8 seconds for Karasuno, you can't say that the advantage isn't in their favor, in Karasuno's, I should specify. Certainly a fantastic push overall to make sure that they could get that extra minute and not just try and fight for a draw with a 4-minute time bank in front of them. But their work is still definitely cut out for them. The way that street phase went, it's very contentious all the way through. Revival need more clean fight wins coming out of that. You can't afford a back and forth when you have to worry about staying on the cart to even keep the round going in the first place. And that's assuming they cap the first point at all. They really need to be as decisive as possible and not afraid to push forward when they have an advantage, just to try and scrape together whatever ground they can. Because as soon as Karasuno starts their push, they'll either need to have a lights out defense or extend the clock, kill the clock as much as possible to have a shot to tie this up before halftime.
And I think looking at what we've got coming out here from Karasuno, they want this particular map over ASAP. They're not going to have Sam coming in with the Junkrat this time. As fun as that was, just straight away on the Genji doesn't want to give over an ult advantage to Wub because we know how good that Dragon Blade can be for clearing up a team fight. So it's just going to be the mirror matchup as we come into our second push through here from Revival on Hollywood. They've got less than a minute and they need to be determined and focused to make this work.
Either they really need to push forward or they need to back up. That's just what I was going to say. If there's an early pick, they cannot be afraid to back up, because if they lose anyone else again like that, this is disastrous for them. They need to immediately pull all the way back. Asking is not afraid to take angles like this, and he will get value. They must be cautious because they are throwing time away.
The chutzpah from this guy, looking to try and take the duel whilst Aspire was in spawn, is ridiculous here. And we're going to see the Bob coming online in the middle of this next fight for Karasuno. They're almost guaranteed that one-man advantage that the Bob provides you, and there's just nothing available here for Revival. There's the Bob already, looking just to make even the contest onto point that bit trickier. The Bob's going to go down pretty quickly here, but it burnt resources out of Revival that they're not going to have ready for this. Fincy drops in from the top rope, drops the People's Hypersphere onto Rupi, and takes him out of the fight. Wub and Aspire, though, are looking to bring this back, and Wub, if he can survive through that stun, is looking to keep this going that little bit further. Salty, less than half HP here, looking to find a couple more picks, and we've got the contest here. We've got a point now capped for Revival, and they're looking to keep the cart rolling in overtime. That was a phenomenal push from Revival. Shouldn't have worked.
No, it really shouldn't have, but that was such a comprehensive effort from the entire team. Aspen whip shot the Bob to keep him on that high ground on the cafe instead of adding an extra body onto point or disruption from his knock up, charge, smash, fist ability thing. Salty with a ridiculous... Yeah, right. The Salty with a ridiculous like 180 accretion onto Finzy in the film room over on the right side as well. And then Wub and Aspire just getting so much value and staying alive, bobbing and weaving between cover and everything like that. I mean, just pure poetry coming out from them on that last one.
That's a lot of Q buttons being smashed on this one. Everything coming out from Karasuno at the same time. Nothing out of Sam's blade here. Now we see it going back the other way. It's a big flux. It's a big blade. It's a big play from Revival. And Karasuno overcooked that one. It's dry. It's flaky. It's not ready for consumption. And Revival are keeping it moving.
Gordon Ramsay would not be happy with that one for sure. Karasuno thinking they could just kind of press all their buttons and win the fight, but Revival getting such immense value off of that gravitic flux. I feel like that was the first time we've really said that this round, and ultimately that turned the fight around entirely. Wub was able to just cleave through them all and just start hacking and slashing.
Amplification Matrix, Bob for Bob here as well. It's Aspires that go down first, and then Aspire. Here's the mana advantage coming in now for Karasuno. Liar's gonna get Sam, but it's not enough to stem the bleeding. More bandages are required. Call the nurse, call for triage, because Karasuno are back. They've got weapons at their disposal, and Revival are taking a trip to the hospital. They've made it all the way through point B, but now Karasuno have more than 4 minutes to get just that little bit further.
I mean, you can't be disappointed with that too much if you're Revival. I think pushing that far through the streets phase off of the back of a fight like that to take that first point was certainly impressive. They at the very least have that to go on, and they have a win condition for this map. That said, time bank, pretty daunting here. They're going to have to be careful with their ultimates to meter them out over time, either in this first point defense or while they're getting through the streets phase, because if they try and do what Karasuno just did and press all their Qs and just hope that wins them the fight, with the amount of time Karasuno have, they will just gradually wear them down and bowl them over. And not even necessarily gradually. All they have to do is weather one of those storms, come back with all their ultimates, and it's pretty decisively won for Karasuno. So Revival need to play careful. They need to think before they act.
And I'm looking at Aspire here because in both of those rounds that we saw from Revival on their push, for Revival's first offense and for the first defense, Aspire was the first person down both times, caught out of position, asking, being incredibly aggressive, taking a lot of space, finding the headshots and securing that advantage. They can't let that happen here. Aspire needs to play safe.
He needs to play his angles right, but his tanks need to support him too. This should not be a meta that, when you think about it, this should not necessarily be a meta that favors snipers because of all the shields. They need to place their shields intelligently to provide cover for the DPS. Otherwise, yeah, they'll totally go down first every fight.
Nice hold there from J-Kara. Actually kind of messes up Aspire's aim. So the TNT doesn't find anything on that one, and there's already a lot of shield pressure being sent the way of Revival, Fortify, and Kinetic Grasp, both already. And we're looking at a two-pronged approach here. Fincy going up the stairs. J-Karu on the low ground forces Revival to come and take the fight on the low ground. And Sam is there to find the assassination onto Aspire. And it's all coming tumbling down here for Revival. Karasuno with the mana advantage, even with the amplification matrix out here from Liar. It ain't looking good, and Karasuno looking to take this point with more than 3 minutes to get it through streets.
Pushing with that pincer sort of style, half the team taking low ground, half the team taking high, I'm generally not a huge fan of it because you never want to split the party, first off, and because it's very easy for the other team to just kind of rush one of those and just overwhelm them and then clean up the stragglers. That said, I think they knew which team Revival were going to prioritize, the high ground team, so they sent the Baptiste over there with the Immortality Field to provide them that little bit of extra sustain, and that was all it took for both of the pincers to reach the point and just overwhelm Revival. So really strong strategic work from Karasuno as they start their push.
This time it's Aspire getting the upper hand here over Asking. Luckily for Karasuno, even though they're losing this fight, they've got the time to play with. And looking at the tick marks on the green side of the screen right now, they've got the ults to play with as well.
Sure, that said, there's nothing to say that Revival couldn't build these next ones up pretty quickly. Start out with the Supercharger perhaps, maybe a Blade if you're feeling spicy, and then use the support ultimates to try and extend the fight. An early pick like that onto Sam really helps as well. That's another 15-20 seconds at least.
This is starting to be a little bit like Karasuno are just getting a little bit ahead of themselves here. They're looking at this as a one map. It's not there yet, guys. You've now got less than 2 minutes to make this happen, and you're going to be walking into the Supercharger. They're just going to wait that one out, though. They don't want to give over ult charge. They don't want to make Revival even harder to walk into. But Revival is still going to have nearly 5 ults online for this next fight.
Right, I mean nearly 6 when you think about it. The Ant Matrix comes out.
There we go. Early pick. Fincy's able to find Liar here. Asking's going to hold on to the bob and see what he can get done. Feel that amplification matrix. Finzi with the second. Sam into the shield, but still getting a little bit of credit there for the kill. Aspire's going to be the last to fall here. There's one last good fight here available for Revival. Karasuno keeping it moving.
You might say there's one last good fight here, but look at Karasuno's ult bank. They didn't use anything. They started with the Matrix and they kept everything else. So yeah, Revival are coming online with 4 ultimates, both DPS and both supports, but they'll also have to deal with the Flux and the Supercharger coming out from Karasuno.
Asking starts things off early with the Bob. It pens Revival in on the far side of the county jail. And now they're just going to press every go button they've got here. Supercharger, Blade. Wow, one swipe. 3 picks there for Sam, and Revival cut down like a field of wheat. It's harvest season, and Karasuno coming back with a big bushel of W's.
That was absolutely the fight they needed. I think the fight before that was beautiful. Starting that and winning that fight with just one ultimate, the Ant Matrix coming out from Drake. I think that was as clean as you could have ever hoped, because then you walk into the next fight with 5 other ultimates, and even though that's only a 1 ult advantage overall, I think the ultimates that they had specifically, the Gravitic Flux, the Supercharger, the Blade, all combo together so well, and they were able to get such great value off of that. You see Sam killing 3 people at once with 1 strike. That's because he was enabled by his team to deal that much damage in one go. Revival were positioned for him perfectly. All he had to do was press the button, and then they're up 2-0 all of a sudden.
That's right. We are only now 1 map away from a 3-0 scoreline here for Karasuno. They have, of course, already secured themselves that contender spot with the first win over on Busan. But, you know, they're looking for as many points as they can here. This is all good practice, and coming out of here with the highest scoreline you possibly can, it's bragging rights, if nothing else. It's like, yeah, we beat almost everybody in Contenders trials, so we're feeling pretty good about our time in Contenders. One potential last map here, Thibble, and we're going to be going to Junkertown, which suggests we might be seeing a little more of this Aspire asking Widow duel coming through.
Right. I mean, that's certainly the talking point of the day here in this match, is watching these 2 amazing hit scans do their work. I think Junkertown throughout has proven to be a map where Widow can really thrive if she's enabled by her team. So far, both of these teams have done a pretty good job of giving openings to their DPS. So I expect an utter bloodbath, of course. But I'm also curious to see how they start to try and counter that sort of pressure. Do you send your Genji after them? Do you swap to maybe a dive-style composition like Triumph had on their attack here on Junkertown to try and put pressure on the snipers? How do your Widows use their sightlines effectively to stay alive and get the most value? It's a big game of rock, paper, scissors here on Junkertown with these snipers, but it makes for some really entertaining Overwatch.
It does, and I feel like when we see Widowmaker play on these maps, it tends to involve giving up about 50% of this first point just to allow Widowmaker to take that really furthest possible sightline right at the back of point A, almost by the point B spawn. And so we tend to see like a big concentrated fight in that archway between the 2 buildings. And that's where we really start to see the difference between the 2 teams and who can cycle between abilities and keep themselves alive the longer to keep themselves in that fight.
Right. I would say, though, that it becomes kind of a psychological warfare situation where are you going to let that team push to that point where those fights traditionally happen and have your Widow take up that long sightline? Or are you going to surprise them and push all the way up to spawn, maybe lose that fight after a minute or so, but get a chance at a second one as well? There's a lot of opportunity for mind games on that first point, especially where you can kind of break up the expected tempo of fights and maybe pull out some interesting holds. We saw some of that on Hollywood, like re-engagements right after the point was captured and stuff like that. So there's definitely room for it here, and it really could throw a wrinkle in for either team if they're not prepared for it.
We do have some space here for some stylistic flourishes from our 2 teams, but they've requested a short break, and we're going to be magnanimous and give them that. So we're going to take a little break ourselves for 5 minutes whilst our teams go and shake the tension out of their wrists, but don't go too far because we've got at least 1 more map coming for you after this break.
right now with Hydra building up to this Bear Barrage so quickly. Oh, and asking!
Double kill in the back with the pulse bomb from the high ground. Aerial assault with that line.
Impact se escucha debajo gritar campeón a Sky Foxes.
Holy cow.
And after 42 consecutive losses, the Shanghai Dragons get their first win.
8 teams enter this weekend.
Oh no, Reinhardt, what are you doing?
We got a clip with minimal information. It's time to break it down. Speed, 25%. Go. Figure out what this man's SR is.
Keep fighting till it's for sure lost. Winnable!
So you queue up for Overwatch Ranked, only to be greeted by this, which then leads to this, and oh no, Reinhardt, what are you doing? The solution? Elo Hell pickup games.
Hey, you know what? Just what we're doing.
Oh my god, it's huge! Oh no! Kill! Let's go!
Open to players of all ranks and most platforms, Pugs give you the chance to experience competitive Overwatch as it was meant to be played, competitively.
I need help.
I'm with you.
Shoot.
No way, dude.
Go. Let's go. Nice. Good call.
Players set their icons to indicate the role they want to play, then 2 captains pick their teammates and draft the most competitive teams they can. You can also take part in our pioneering learning event, Coached Pugs. To take part, join the Elo Hell Pickup Games Discord, and be sure to read the Pug Guide and FAQ. Good luck, have fun, and we'll see you in-game.
Welcome back, everybody. We are ready to go into what could be the final map of today's match between Karasuno and Revival. And of course, we went through this before the break. It's going to be Junkertown. I'm Big Hungry Phil. Still with me is Thibble. And Thibble, what's your prediction for this one? Who's going to be taking this this next map?
If I feel bad predicting anything at this point, just because the outcome is already decided, I predict that it will be a slaughter on both sides. Not a slaughter as in a one-sided match. I'm saying both of these teams are just going to punch all of the other person's teeth out, and it's just going to be really satisfying to watch. Like the two Pikachus in the first Pokemon movie, and they just kind of like slap each other and slap each other. That's what we're looking at in this sort of game. It's despite the grim imagery, very satisfying.
I mean, look, I'm hoping for something a little more high tempo than a Pikachu slap off. If I'm honest, you'd really like something up around the level of Final Showdown in Rocky, that kind of level.
Sure.
But I'll take Pikachu if that's all we're going to get here. Both of these teams, I think,
isn't that
in Rocky or in
Rocky, not in the Pikachu slap fight. Didn't someone die in Rocky? I don't remember.
Look, Ash gets turned into stone in the Pikachu movie, and it is one of the saddest things that ever happened. So,
that's
guys playing, if you can avoid turning any of your players into stone and have it be heartbreaking, we'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, your cat's crying over you. Would have to try and bring you back to life or something. It's raining. Nobody wants to see that, man. We're just here to watch some Overwatch.
And speaking of bringing back, let's try desperately to bring ourselves back into this match, because I've completely lost what we were talking about here. Junkertown are ready to go. And this is, of course, make or break time for the series, make or break time for the tournament in general. As a bit and gone after the end of Busan. And we're going to be seeing Karasuno coming out here on the defense. And as predicted, it's asking on the Widowmaker.
Right. I mean, this is as standard as it gets. This is exactly the sort of thing we were expecting to see. That said, I don't think that means it's going to be boring. I still expect Asking and Sam to pop off. Hikaru and Finzi have been getting a lot of value and really holding their own there on the front line, and they're getting a lot of great support from Drake and Gustav. I want to point out, Gustav, I think, has hit a couple of the clutchest whip shots this series I've seen so far, like negating Bob's entirely and really just shaking up the entire positioning sort of meta of these fights so far. So keep an eye on him.
Yeah, man, I don't mind saying I got to do a little bit of casting with Gustav last week, and he is a real smart guy. So this isn't like reflexes. This is brain coming out from Gustav, and brain coming out for Asking as he lands a bullet in the Dome of War, and then straight into Aspire as well. Great command here of these long sight lines. There's the trick shot for a little more style. Lands a couple of dinks there onto Salty, and the Immortality Field up and down incredibly quickly. And look how much ult charge Asking already has on this one. This is a slow knockdown, drag cleanup onto the fight here. Asking's going to be looking to take an aggressive position now that the site is up, for the rest of Karasuno backing out for now.
Right, and I mean, the spawn advantages here will still favor Revival, so they still have to give them that sort of respect. But the ultimate advantage is pretty significant here.
I mean, you could not have got those two amplification matrix more closely together and more put out in sync. Asking couldn't quite get that final pink there onto Salty to take him out of the ultimate, but the Fincy has been able to do the damage there, Liar and Salty down, even though it's the Asking going down here as well. And Karasuno back up front and taking space. Fincy on the hunt. Sam with the blade deals with Aspire. They won that fight, but Sam wanted to swing the sword anyway.
That is definitely a send a message style ultimate, because it certainly didn't get as much value as it could have. The one pick is great, but the spawn advantage is so good too.
Man, Asking has just been an absolute demon here on the Widowmaker. Aspire is not being allowed to play the game. Whiskey's actually about to lap Aspire for ult charge here. In fact, they're neck and neck. Supercharger now out from Karu. If Asking can land a dink through this, it's going to be a guaranteed lap here. In fact, that's it. That's the lap. Asking's going to have this infra site online. And Aspire's being chased down by Sam. Sam's going to fall to the Venom Mine. But that's a stylish way to go out, frankly.
Yeah, he died a hero, I suppose, or a villain, depending on which team you're rooting for. I think he knew there was no hope for him at that point, and you might as well just put the thumbs up as the lava consumes you.
Yeah, it's if I go down, I'm taking you with me, and boy did he take Aspire down with him. Aspire is about to get this first insight of the match online, so you'll have an angle through onto asking shortly. Whoop with the supercharged Nanoblade might be an opening here for Revival, but Karasuno have done a lot to burn time off the clock.
Certainly. I mean, a minute and counting at this point just about, and it looks like Karasuno have the tools to really maintain that defense.
Fincy's backing up here and giving a little bit of respect over to Revival as they start to close the distance. Knows there are tools available to them. And do you know what, Fincy? Look, my friend, if you make yourself float up into the air, the Widowmaker is going to find you. She had the sights up and she took him right down again as Spire gets asking for the second there. And this is Revival finally breaking through this 6-foot thick wall of a hold that Karasuno have been mounting.
Goodness me. Aspire just showing Finzy what that melody really is. It's whatever pitch a bullet makes. Let's say a C sharp or so. That's the universe singing to him in a whole new way. I definitely don't think he wanted to hear that one on the radio, but there you go.
Oh! What a combo! The dash through Sam takes him out of the fight and secures an early position here for Revival to take some space and show a little gumption in this fight.
So Sam, from my understanding, is a fairly young gun. I don't know if I've ever heard of him or if he's someone I know but with a name change or something. I think he needs to learn that Wub has been around for quite some time, and he really baked his bread playing Genji. This is a meta that brought him out of retirement, and there's a reason he came back. It's because he's real good at the hero. So
it's the same,
Sam has certainly
reason
been having the day.
It's the same reason we've got Facility back in EMEA as well. Is what's this? Genji's meta cracks knuckles, jumps back onto the keyboard, ready to go. Halo's rounded the final corner now for Revival, and they will have a Dragon Blade ready to go. They're waiting for the supercharge to come online, though, I feel.
Yep, they need that little bit of extra combo to really crack the shell here. They want to make sure they do it right. This is one of their best opportunities with not much time left.
Beautiful dash from Sam to escape the gravitic flux right into the backline. Finds Aspire. Casual slash there onto Aspen as well, just for good measure. Got to keep that high ground position. Drops down to get into the backline, and it's clean-up crew time for Karasuno. Revival with 80 seconds left on the clock.
I really respect that Dragon Blade from Sam because it just gets the one kill he really feels he needs, and then he gets out. The kill onto Aspire, like really just negates any sort of like burst pick potential coming out from Revival in that fight. So even though they were trying to set something up with the gravitic flux, there's no value to be had when one of your DPS is just assassinated.
Sam's already halfway to another blade. We're going to see Wood pulling the trigger first, has the supercharger online, has to burst to the immortality field. We'll get a pick there as Gustav goes down here. Man advantage still for Revival, but asking is uncontested, hidden away in the low ground, all the space in the world to hide the head hitbox and get the picks. 30 seconds and a little bit more on the clock here for Revival to make something happen. Not a lot to work with.
So I like what Wub was trying to do, which is I'm going to push to the cart. You're going to have to come and get me. The only problem is that they had the answer to that. They came and got him. So he was called on his bluff there, and I definitely think he would have liked to have that hand back.
You forget sometimes the number of types of games that Overwatch can be, poker being just one of them, a tactical RPG, another, FPS coming into it occasionally as well, and the FPS looking pretty good now for Karasuno as Sam goes up into the high ground, and it's once again straight onto Aspire. Aspire, who's got to be feeling so victimized by Sam as he gets the triple kill to round that out. You're going to see a breakdancing Orisa there from J. Karu celebrating a hold on Streets. And now, Revival get a crack at the defense, and if they want this map and the series to go that little bit further, that's where they've got to hold until, that little box right there on B.
J. Karu saying, hey guys, look what happens when I press this button on my mouse. And just, I mean, God, I think it's I think the first time I ever saw that was when XQC was back in the Overwatch League in those dark days. And you literally couldn't. I have some friends that are observers in the Overwatch League, name drop, haha. And they basically said that they could not observe him because he does that too often and it will hurt people's heads. They also will not observe Geguri for that reason because her sensitivity is so high, which is a shame because she's really good at the video game. That said, this game, boy howdy, if I'm Aspire, I don't know how I'm staying on the Widowmaker after that because it's so clear that the strategy coming out from Karasuno is just murk the Widowmaker at every possible opportunity. That said, you kind of need one if the other team's going to run one, so they're in this difficult catch-22 sort of situation where they need to be able to counter with that pressure. That said, asking, don't make me hope like this. Don't lead me on. I need this. I need this.
You need this, but
No.
okay, now there we
Yeah,
go.
I
Get you
can't.
baited. Get you baited. Yeah, you need the double shield for that to really work.
Yeah, but I mean, we are seeing this Triumph style. I don't know if they were the originators, but I like them, so I'm going to call it that. This Triumph style Winston ball dive coming out, and I think this is a great wrinkle to throw to really disrupt the plans. It's been a bit since anything like that came out, and Karasuno have the element of surprise here coming out on this attack.
I'm going to be looking here for asking to try and outposition Aspire. Like, he really wants to take that threat off the board so the rest of the team can get in and start to find some angles. Asking has got an angle here onto a tank, but there's a lot of shield in his way, so he can't find anything. But Sam's on the hunt in the background. He's crouching his way forward. Aspire is once more the mercy of Sam, and he's got shurikens to spare. And Sam's now going to dip into the back line here. And I think he's just going to look to stop this recontest, this reposition coming back through from Aspire. He's just going to spend the rest of this game spawn camping.
I mean, why not, right? At this point, I imagine Karasuno are feeling very confident. Their win condition is clearly in sight. This fight is certainly winnable. It's simple enough for them to just bully this poor Widowmaker.
No bully.
Even if they don't get anything, this is still so effective.
Yeah, it's a huge pick potential threat and a large part of your damage off the table. And I'm starting to get the impression here of Karasuno playing with their food a little bit here. But this is food, much like a pineapple, that can eat you back. Whoop with the double there. Almost gets Asking as well, and Asking's going to retreat, but can't get far enough out of the way to survive through that. So Karasuno having some fun, but at the minute, not looking like they're lining up for a win just yet.
No, I think they can take the time on this. The Primal was a bit weird, but hey, what are you going to do? They've got the time anyways to build up another. The spawn camp provided maybe an extra 10 or so seconds of a man advantage, but Revival turned around and understood that they had an advantage so long as Finzi was in the backline causing trouble. Now they're setting up for another hold here, winning another fight off of those two picks. And, I mean, Karasuno can certainly flip the switch, I think, at pretty much any point they want. They have a couple ultimates here that can really turn the tide. But they don't have all the time in the world to work with either. So I think they need to start playing a little more serious if they want to make sure they can at least cap this point and get an extension to win this map.
They may find that they've overplayed their hand here a little bit because we've got 90 seconds on the clock and the cart is stopped at the most difficult position to get past. We'll see Jkaru now move and pick up the Orisa to get a little bit more sense and sensibility in this composition. And Sam is closing in on a Dragon Blade, but Wub's going to have one of their own to go. There's the minefield. Power driver in, but immediately stunned out and salty with the Gravitic Flux over on the front line. And that's where things maybe start to get a little bit dicey as Sam, with the blade drawn and ready to slice, gets one, then one with a reset, but now they've got to deal with Wub pushing back the other way, and I wish we'd seen that, because out came the incredibly serious, damaging ultimate from Wub, and he just gets run over by a hamster piloting a ball.
Man, I know we want to talk about the Dragon Blade from Wub. Can we talk about how long how long Aspen survived? Just on like 5 or 10 health against Sam. Wub gets that cleanup, and Aspire, goodness me, they all move forward quite a bit. They want to make sure that they can secure this point for sure, Karasuno.
where they're currently sat is kind of a difficult position to make a high ground hold really work. They're probably going to have to fall back once they've given over, trying to get whatever early charge they can here. And, well, here he is, everybody. Everyone's favorite Omnic looking to come and take a position on the cart behind a double shield. This is rough. This is very rough.
Oh, man. I love this.
Amplification Matrix. He gets rocked out. And Laya finds the first pick here, so again, Karasuno maybe getting a little bit cocky with that one. Laya's going to go down here, and still not a huge amount of value from Asking. Now with the supercharger in play, we may see them push forward that little ways. Salty falls low. There's no healers there to really keep him alive through this. A momentary hold drags him back away from Salty, but now Salty is trapped out in no man's land, securing a 5v5 on the point. Sigma on Sigma violence in the backline. And not far here to go. Beautiful pulse bomb from Aspire, but we've got 2 minutes just under to go, and the car is nearly where it needs to be for Karasuno.
So the interesting thing about the Bastion pick is that while you would never compare the two heroes, the benefits provided by both a Bastion and a Widowmaker are pretty similar, because it's a huge amount of burst damage and it's zone control. You have to think about where you're going to place yourself to avoid that hero, whether it's a barrage of bullets or one single really, really effective bullet. So I liked the idea, but it's certainly one of those things you just try once and then don't waste any time on it. You're approaching a minute left to go. You've got some great ultimates to combo here. I mean, and the way Asking's been building ultimates, a good couple dynamites, and you have Bob yourself, even in this last minute.
They need to be a little bit careful because the amplification matrix is now online and controls a huge amount of space. Karasuno thought they were out of the way of that one, but Wood is able to make the rotation and pick out Drake. And now we're at below a minute here for Karasuno, and every second they waste looking to get this recontest is more time for Revival to get ults on the floor and ready to go. In fact, there is a bunch of obstacles in the way here for Karasuno.
Right, and I mean, Asking going down early too means that he can't really build up too much towards that Bob. That and the supercharger are really the only pieces that Karasuno is missing. But now, I mean, Revival have 5 ultimates themselves. This is a lot like those last couple fights on Hollywood. Lots of ultimates online, but the picks will be what decides it, as Asking get that one on the wire.
There's got to be a big pulse bomb here from Aspire on the recontest to really make up for the fact that they've not got Laya in this fight just yet. But it's going to have to come through a lot of damage here. Pulse bomb out, dueling gravitic fluxes, and Salty's able to take Sam out in the middle of the blade, which opens things up here for Wub, who will get stunned. Has to spend some time dealing with the immortality field, but will take Gustav out here. And Revival are looking good here to hold. Asking's going to take out Aspire, but Wub is on the hunt. He's down below half health, but it's not going to stop him finding value. There's now a Bob contesting the cart that deals with Salty. And this was looking so good for Revival, but they're having to fight a fighting retreat here. They're moving back consistently. Karasuno are moving inexorably forward. Nothing is stopping their roll. The payload is approaching this golden box of victory. Amplification matrix and immortality field thrown out now from Revival. It's a Hail Mary, but it might have been enough with the Rosary out to secure the win here as the pick comes through onto Drake. Jikaru down. Salty gets the run over, takes Asking and Gustav out of the fight, and that is it. Revival taking a map in the series and keeping it alive, Pibble.
I don't think Karasuno minds too much. Their contender spot is secure and so on and so forth. But if I'm them, I'm at least slightly kicking myself for that first attack phase, I should say. I definitely think they were playing with their food a bit, thinking that they could really just overcome by pressing all their Qs and pressing W at the same time. But Revival are not just going to bowl over. They understand perfectly well that this has been a contentious series, even if the scoreline favors Karasuno right now. And there's nothing to say that they couldn't keep turning up like that and bring this to a map 4 and a map 5 even. That said, I think Karasuno now will say, all right, let's try and finish this up. Maybe not play with our food so much this time. And Volskaya could look very different, but this could be the start of something interesting for Revival.
There's a reason why we were talking about Revival as, despite the tricky circumstances, being a team that was in the running for making it back up into contenders. And no matter how confident you feel, underestimating your opponent like this is almost always going to result in you taking that L. So that loss there
you don't want to say this was Karasuno's fault for not taking this seriously, because it's their fault for not being prepared enough as a team for the fact that Revival know what they're doing and can counter you by making the right swaps and putting the ults out in the right place. So really fair credit there to Revival. It was very well played.
Right. I mean, those last couple fights on defense, I mean, there were great initial pickoffs. There were great disengages to deny value from the massive ult advantage that Karasuno had. The last minute swap onto Wrecking Ball, surprisingly effective at preventing, extra disruption coming out from Karasuno's Wrecking Ball as well. I think overall they really were firing on all cylinders in those last couple fights. And those sorts of like heads up positioning plays and hero swaps as well were really what let them just kind of weather the storm and come out on top on Junkertown. Now in Volskaya, they'll have to kind of keep that going against a team that might be playing a little angry, perhaps.
You've got to assume, though, that now that Revival have had a taste from that sweet, sweet cup of victory, that they're maybe feeling a little bit rejuvenated now. Like they know that if Karasuno continue to underestimate them, they can bring out the upset here. So maybe that was the start of the reverse sweep, and Volskaya is where it continues. But starting off here on the defense for Revival, it's more of the same. It's the Genji Ashe, the double shield. What were we expecting?
Right. Yeah, I mean, Volskaya certainly favors that, especially this first point. Revival ready to go, hashtag once more, but Karasuno, I mean, this Widowmaker, nasty. I'm very excited to see how that matchup goes now that it's not actually a mirror.
Yeah, of course, very difficult to find value through the double shield. One of the things that the Ashe brings to this composition is the ability to get damage onto players and generate ults around that, and that's awful. That is probably the person you least want to lose, and you don't want to lose anybody here. Mupi is now offline. Nobody's soak of damage. Nobody's set up Hulk combos. We've taken one tire off the car. It's not long before the whole thing grinds to an unfortunate and expensive halt. Wub was able to find one here, but it's not going to be enough because Karasuno, they're sinking their teeth into the point, and they're not going to let this go anytime soon. Revival starting to punch back here, though. Jake Haru now down, and Mubi comes back in on the Wrecking Ball to keep the contest going. And amazingly, we're starting to see Karasuno have to give up a little bit of ground. As Sam finds a couple of picks and takes both supports offline, though, expect this to start bouncing back the other way as Karasuno rubber band off the point. But Gustav was left unguarded there, and Wub was able to find them. So Revival once more refusing to say die in these team fights, and they may just grind out a hold here. Sam's going to have the blade, looking to find at least one with that, takes Salty out and is now on the hunt for more, but this might be where it finally dies out for them.
What a ridiculous microcosm of this entire series. It's just so back and forth. Picks either way that you really can't call this because the spawn difference is not that huge, especially when you have a Wrecking Ball and a Genji recontesting as quick as they are. And I mean, I don't even know how to make heads or tails of that fight because it was just constant slobber knocking. We're back at the Pikachu slap fight, except it was turned up 300%. I mean, this is some very contentious and very entertaining Overwatch.
The thing is, the Karasuno have squandered a lot of resources here, and they've had to swap asking over onto the Ashe to make this a little bit more sensible. So they're coming into a whole world of pain between the Flux and the Dragon Blade here. And expect Aspire to have a bomb here pretty quickly with who he's got able to charge this off. And that's going to be Salty starting things off with the Flux. Wub out with the blade, won't find too much, does a bit of body damage, and Sam goes down to the rock here. So they're already a player down, and really, if you're playing sensibly for Karasuno, you're going to want to get out as quickly as you can on this one, because you're getting close to only having a minute left on the clock. Fincy's down now as well. Where's the reset, Karasuno?
I feel like they just consistently feel like they could clutch this out if something goes their way. If they commit the right abilities, the right ultimates, if they can catch Aspire in the middle of his tactical crouch there, maybe they can start turning something around. But Revival are just as contentious. They say, we're not going to give you the opportunity. We have the spawn advantage. We know we have the man advantage. We're going to push into you. And if you try and spend resources to push us back, so much the better. We'll take that. We have the advantage.
There's the pulse bomb, comes through, triggers the immortality field here as well, but will buy a lot of ult charge for the supports from Revival. Both Wub and Rupee take a bit of a battering on the way through on this one. And we're about to get a Bob and a Blade online. Both of these available here for Karasuno as Moopy falls. Aspire on the hunt, trying to get them through their rotation, but might be a little bit slow on making that one happen. Now Sam has the high ground, able to dodge the rock on that one. And if you can dodge a rock, you can dodge a dodgeball, but Salty not having so much luck with the hyperspheres. Here comes Sam with the blade, and all of his targets lifted out of his purview. Asking's able to find one here with the Bob, and Sam's now looking for clean up on the final couple of members trapped up in that room on the left-hand side. Fincy's going to get Wub on this one. They're not out of this fight just yet, as Revival still have contests coming their way, but as Aspen and Lyre are both bullied out here, there's finally the cap on A.
Man, I feel bad for you. You were talking 1,000 miles a minute in these long, contentious fights. I mean, Ultimate's just spraying back and forth everywhere here. Now, though, Karasuno have an opportunity with both support ults and a supercharger to start building things up. Revival have to come in with their ultimate early to take advantage.
Yeah, Wub with the early blade is trying to make that happen, but he is now trying to slash through both the immortality field and a rally, and it's hard to make that happen. Instead, he's going to go into the back, finds them conveniently at eye height, and takes Drake and Gustav out of that with a dash reset. Gets the work over on J. Karu, deals the body blows, and comes out of that with a good amount of ult charge to show for it.
I like the push from Revival. I think they understood they needed to take the initiative and use their ultimates proactively. Otherwise, they were just going to get bowled over by Karasuno and whatever they decided to use. That said, I think Karasuno understood as soon as the ultimates started coming out from Revival, let's just take this easy, come back with our ultimates for next fight, and have a bit of an advantage. Revival need to continue their proactiveness to keep themselves alive in this fight until they can build more ults to counter, or get a pick like
My
that.
days, a spy with a monster of a pulse bomb. Takes out 2, and Wub looks to close the difference and the distance and tries to find a little bit more towards that Dragon Blade. This is such a good hold from Revival.
I mean, just such a great switch in aggression and proactiveness coming out from them, getting great value off of the Pulse Bomb, which is already 40% charged again. That said, now they only really have the Dragon Blade. This is the first time they'll have a significant ultimate disadvantage that they won't necessarily be able to overcome with a lucky press of Q. Karasuno have a blade to combo with a flux and a supercharger, and right behind them comes the pulse bomb and the support ultimates too.
It's the Super Blade online, the Bongo Blade online, ready to go as the slash comes through and deals with Lyre. Whoop down here as 2. They're going to lose J. Karu, but Karasuno now with a chance here to start aggressing onto point, and it's a heck of a shield dance coming here from Moopy, but the moves, they ain't quick enough to keep them alive in this one. The Karasuno players now have their footing on the point, ready to go, but the respawns are going to be coming in thick. They're going to be coming in fast now for Revival, and if they're not quick with the picks here, Karasuno, they're going to struggle to make this happen. They're going to get that first tick on board now. Supercharger out, but it does no good for Moopy as the amplification matrix puts paid to any hopes of the recontest. 2 ticks now on the board for Karasuno, and a heck of a lot of body blocking here, all stuffing up that main approach through, allows Karasuno to round that out with 20 seconds on the clock.
Revival in that very last fight just never really had the chance to set up the proper positioning that they wanted on that point. They were never able to get the right foothold to really establish a defense with any of the tools that they had at their disposal, which admittedly were not many in the first place. I think Karasuno understood that very well and knew that they really just had to push up, hold their shields, and deal damage through those choke points to hold them back without even necessarily cleanly winning that fight. They knew they had the zoning advantage and the resource advantage to cap that second point, and it was simple enough for them, even if they only finished with 20 seconds left.
I think a large part of why we see them only come through with 20 seconds left is their stubborn, questionable refusal to give up that long 1 minute 20-second long fight on point A that should have been 2 clean fights, maybe, that they lose, but come away with ults. And there's a lot to be said for perseverance, but it can be taken too far.
Sure. I mean, it's one of those things where you have to trust your in-game leader, right? Whoever's making the call, we can do this, keep going, use this. Maybe we can clutch it out if we use these cooldowns or these ultimates. You can't say no in the middle of the fight. You just have to go for it. So if your leader's making those calls and you're just trying your best, I mean, sometimes that works and makes for some very interesting and very clutch, like man down fight wins. But oftentimes it can lead to these extended losses that really burn the clock. So it's something they'll have to go over with their in-game leadership and comm structure. But ultimately, there's not much they can do now. They have the time bank they have. They need to just hold this cohesive defense and try and finish this series.
We're going to be seeing Asking doing their bit to try and keep this going, but playing the Widowmaker here, looking for that instant pick potential. Goes for the trick shot, has the line on Aspire, the head-seeking missile out from Asking, deals with his opposite number, and it's 5v6ville. As we see the fight rotate to take the Mega Health Pack room here. So far, it's just deployables down, and Revival pushing through strong, lifting the rock and swiping Karasuno out from under it. That was an incredible fight.
Revival also very confident in their push there, not even bothering to secure that first tick early when they were very near to securing it in the middle of that fight. They instead wanted to make sure they went in as an entire unit and cleaned up. And yeah, you know, there was one last minute pick from Asking coming out, but ultimately certainly not enough to stop that. Now 5 minutes and 45 seconds to cap the second point and maybe start building up again towards what could become the beginnings of a reverse sweep or even just a map win, something to keep Revival going.
I mean, look, if they keep on this form, they're looking to, at the very least, take us to a 5 here. They haven't maybe got the all-stay light to get this capped with, and the Sam with the possibility of a shutdown here with the Blade to start the defense off strong. Won't even need that. Lie is going to go down. That's one ult and a heck of a lot of healing off the table now for Revival. And there's the big tactical suicide pact of a reset from Revival.
Everyone saw a nice bowl of Kool-Aid and decided to take a sip, I suppose. It happens to the best of them, but certainly the smartest play overall. They needed to just get out of there. There's no sense trying to set up for one of those long, stubborn fights because the spawn advantage on the defense is so comprehensive. There's no getting around it. So it might look a bit gruesome, but certainly the smart play overall from Revival.
It was actually Flavor Aid, by the way, rather than Kool-Aid. But
excuse me.
I understand where you're coming from. That is the common saying on that one. We're seeing Revival here take the lazy route through, and Liar just turns himself into a one-man clay pigeon shooting rate, and Askin takes him out first in the fight again. Askin takes a bit of a dink, but the rest of Karasuno are more than able to make up for that one-man disadvantage, and this is really rough for Salty. He was getting staggered out there.
I don't really know what Revival were going for, trying to take the revolving sushi bar platform over to the point. I mean, yeah, it's certainly not an expected angle, but you give the enemy team so much time to prepare and so many angles to get a shot on you. And we've seen all series long that if you give Asking an angle, he will take it. It is a very dangerous play that they're trying again. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of this. I need to see more coming out from this, a more decisive engagement coming out from Revival. Because if they just stand here waiting to be served up like a plate of sashimi, they're going to eat.
You ever played one of those shooting games at a fair where it's just a line of ducks going back and forth the entire time? That's exactly what Revival have made themselves here. They've given it up, and they've given up the Bob here, so they've given up Salty here as well early. They just got so easily read by Karasuno in that one, and they've already lost more than 2 minutes on the offense here. They had a 5-minute plus time bank at the start of this, and they are just whizzing it away.
Right, and I mean, they either got knocked down or decided to jump down from the platforms right before they crossed this main wall that Karasuno are at right now. And then they set up at the main choke point and just decided to start committing things, but I don't think there was really any thought behind it. They threw down the amplification matrix, but didn't really have the positioning to get value out of it, and were so consistently zoned out and so split that they were never really able to make anything happen. Now they're trying it again, and I am just really not a fan of this. I need to see them decisively engage. I keep saying that, but it must be decisive.
Okay, well, at least nobody got picked off making the rotation this time, and they are now getting ready to drop to the low ground, but they've spent so much time doing this that they are going to be walking into a Blade and a Gravitic Flux, and we're going to see both come online at once. Whoops, down already.
Sam momentarily coach gun back, so only one pick of the blade, but the fight's done. There are still people in it, there are still buttons being pressed, but Revival are not winning this one anytime soon.
And they look to be going for, I mean, they're probably trying to think of ways to get out of this or wait for their sixth man to come back online, but this is another fight that will burn a lot of time. That said, the pick on the Gustav could open things up.
Yeah, that's a nice pick, particularly because Gustav was most of the way towards having the rally, and as Spire finds the second that this amplification matrix from Lyre has really opened things up here. Lyre themselves getting a couple of pokes on that one as well. Nice from Salty to stop the recontest coming through. It hasn't stopped Sam though. Sam's still here and keeping it going, but he's now going to try and make something happen through the rally, and we are back now into the speed characters, the stall picks, the recontest for as long as possible from Karasuno, but they've not got much more time to make this work. Sam out, Jkaru back in, the Bob in for good measure, and we finish this with a 1 minute 47 time bank for Revival.
At the very least, I will give Revival credit there. I was very skeptical of that try and set up in the Mega Health Pack room and wait for our last man to show up again so we can restart the fight type scenario, because if they fail, if they slip up and lose another person, they've lost 90 seconds or so on the clock after already burning 3.5 minutes. That said, it actually worked. They were actually able to hold off, wait, turtle up in that room until someone came back. They push forward to 6 and start getting picks. Aspire with the early pickoffs there really opened the door for them. Lyre helping to clean up on a couple of those, and after that, you're just clearing up the stragglers. So I might have liked... I'm curious to see what failed for them on the first couple. I think they got displaced a couple times, or were just a little flustered about maybe trying something new. But once they really figured it out and were able to find those openings, even with the mid-fight slip-up of sorts, they were able to recover and bring that around into a fight win. So I'll give them credit, because I didn't think they were going to be able to do it. And now they do have, not as significant as they would like, but they do have a time bank advantage. And that's a big deal here on Volskaya.
That entire thing, to me, Fiddle, felt like somebody thought they were being incredibly clever, and it just wasn't as clever as they really were hoping for. So a lot of time burnt off the clock, but we now have just 1 minute for Karasuno to make their run through on this one. We're going to be looking for one of these characteristic early picks we've seen from Asking on the way through. They're going to be making the rotation through onto the low ground, looking to get up onto this higher ground, challenge Revival, and push them back and take up this defensive position. Fire's going to back off a little bit here so that they can fire in uncontested without the risk of just being run down by the tanks, but this is already working out for Karasuno. They've taken up the high ground position. It's a lot more powerful here, particularly with some of the damage that Asking can throw. No real engage just yet, though.
Such an interesting game of rotational tic-tac-toe. Both of them deciding, oh, you have a no, please, I'll take it. No, go ahead.
Yeah, we were really looking like children's nursery rhymes going on in the middle of that. We'll see one pick already coming through, and it's going to force the Spire to come back in on the Tracer. Good position now from Karasuno. They got one tick on this already, but they're unable to keep Jkaru in the fight. They've got Fincy in still, and they've got the Bob, and they've got Sam doing damage. They're going to have Fincy ready with the Gravitic Flux for this next fight. But despite the fact we've got stalls coming out here for Revival, that's it. Karasuno will have A under their command.
I think just a patient play from Karasuno and a good job of rotating and generally maintaining their high ground control over Revival. Revival did have a plan there in their rotation. They said, we're going to give up the high ground and we're just going to try and rotate back up behind them and just kind of force this ring around the rosy scenario. But ultimately, a pick coming through kind of puts a dent in that plan. If someone falls over in the middle of your game and ring around the rosy, you generally have to stop playing.
Contest is already going, and Sam's trying to make something happen with the blade, but in the meantime it's a fencing match because Wub is there with the blade as well, and it's a 1-for-1 trade. Jkaru now with the supercharger buys a little bit more kill potential for the team, and that's a nice TNT over onto Aspire. The chase comes through, and Aspire's going to go down. The numbers are looking good now for Karasuno as Sam moves up out of the range of that amplification matrix. The kills very heavily favoring Karasuno now. They've got 2 ticks on the board, and they're looking to round out the stragglers. There's a ball on the point, though. Salty looking to keep this contest going as long as possible, but the numbers are here for Karasuno. Salty's going to go down. Aspire's going to go down. Been desperate hopping around trying to keep this going, and that is going to be it surely now for Karasuno.
I think Karasuno just do such a good job of just isolating members of the enemy team. There were so many instances there where asking an Aspire, just having a 1v1 off on the side, a Blade to counter the other Dragon Blade coming out from Sam. I think these Karasuno's players really have their counterparts' number and are always keeping track of where that person is, what resources they're ready to use, and what the other person is trying to accomplish from their position. And their counterplay is so smart with that because they know, okay, if the other Ashe is trying to go for a flank, I just need to go over there and apply pressure, maybe get some dynamite damage or otherwise force her out of that position. And that whole time, she's not getting value on their defense and we'll be able to gradually overwhelm them. It was such a smart game of attrition for Karasuno that really allowed them to cap that second point because it wasn't a definitive smashing of ults. It wasn't a 3K Dragon Blade. It was just whittling them down one by one.
There is a world here where we go to another round on Volskaya, but a lot of this is going to depend on whether Karasuno, at the start of this round, they opened up their cupboards and they were looking to see, do we put on our serious pants? Do we put on our silly pants? Are we going to play this to win, or are we going to play this to have fun? If they're looking to round this out here, this defense needs to be pixel perfect to rob Revival of any chance of snowballing into B.
Right. I think they really need to, just like they did on their offense, they need to be very careful with their rotations and mindful of what that grants the enemy team and what it gets them. I think holding this high ground is very smart. It applies so much pressure as Revival try and rotate to the point.
Yeah, Revival's still making that standard rotation around the far side of the point. We're going to see ASCII, the very least, maintain that high ground whilst Fincy drops down to contest. Back into the Mega Health Pack room, but a lot of fire currently on everybody on Karasuno. And they're going to have to tag in because they are giving up ticks now. And Jay Karu's going to go down early and hard. Now, with Wub away in the back, looking to try and work down the tanks. This is actually looking really good for Revival to not only cap A, but to cap A with a bit more time in the bank. What would the cleanup here is going to be coming up on a Dragon Blade ready for this next offense, and they've got 1 minute 20 seconds to make this work. They could finish this with a time bank, or we could go to 0 seconds for both of these teams.
Right. I think at this point, even if they cap, both teams will receive another minute. It's or die, and this pick certainly opening things up for Revival.
Yeah, it's a heck of a start, but Drake did get that amplification matrix out, and asking is finding value already. There's the double. Now, if you're Karasuno, you're happy for this fight to go slow. You want to give Revival as little chance as possible to recontest, and there are certainly tools available for Karasuno to make that happen.
Right, they need to be proactive, much like Revival were on their first defense. They can't be afraid to walk up and press Qs to try and burn these last 32 seconds or so. That said, Aspire and Wub could really open the door, and they'll have the rally to engage, making them a little more hardy. The Gravitic Flux could also be comboed to great effect with this Bob, so Revival not out of it yet, but they need to make this rotation clean. If they get picked off, this is pretty much over.
Asking and the rest of Karasuno now give up on the high ground. They haven't spotted the rotation is coming into the left-hand side just yet. Sam's in a position now to drop a big old blade over the top of Revival. Slices through, gets both constructs, finds them all lined up in a corridor like so many squishy bowling pins. He chops them into pieces, and that is going to be where this rounds out. Karasuno found their serious pants, and they've managed to drag out the win here on Volskaya.
Right. I mean, clean as you like there on that last fight. I think they weren't that aggressively proactive that we saw from Revival, on their first defense, but they were proactive enough. They saw them coming down that hallway on the left side, knew that they could just start chucking things down, burn through the immortality field real quick, and then just get value off the blade towards the latter half of its casting. And that's really all they needed. There was less than 30 seconds left. That's one of those situations where it's okay to just press all your buttons to win the game because it actually works.
Yeah, it was a really great show of restraint in not getting rid of those ultimates too early, and just a great understanding of when and where to apply the pressure. The fact that Wub was just able to, sorry, not Wub, the fact that Sam was just able to get in over the top and immediately slice down the immortality field and then just find them all lined up shows a lot about this team's understanding of the game. And fair play to Revival. There were moments here where they really punched back and made Karasuno have to work for what they got. But at the end, Karasuno just had the upper hand consistently over the course of the match.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this was certainly not a stomp. This was not a
No,
drastic
not at all.
outplay by any means. It was a very entertaining and very close series. But at the end of the day, I think Karasuno just had the slight edge in almost all categories. They had some great mechanical outplays, some very interesting picks, like pick offs, I should say, that you might not expect in a meta with 2 or 3 shields walking around. I think just some great mechanical skill coming out from Sam all the way through. I definitely want to shout him out for just consistently applying damage and having great shield pressure all the way through that match. The tanks as well, getting great value out of their ultimates, and most importantly, staying alive. You did not see a lot of early tank pickoffs coming out from Karasuno. They played smart. And at the end of the day, it might not be the most exciting or flashy thing, but smart Overwatch will win you games. And Karasuno are playing very intelligently right now, which is exactly what they need when they start getting into some contenders matches.
And it's also a really good showing here for Fincy, who, previously was an Overwatch League player. And we don't see everybody that leaves the Overwatch League find their way to success in the lower ladders. A lot of people either just try and transition to streaming, or they find that they no longer have the desire to try and grind out the tier 2 scene. But for Fincy, this could be the start of a really big redemption arc, because he's showing himself to be a force to be reckoned with on the Sigma. And you've got to assume anybody scouting down into tier 2, and particularly over the next season of Contenders, is going to be looking at Fincy as a potential pickup, because tank is a role that is almost always in demand.
Certainly, yeah, and I mean, it could be one of those. It's frequently a role, especially off tank, that is very demanding. You need to be proficient on a wide range of heroes to really be a good off tank. And while we obviously see tons of Finzi on Sigma, because that's just kind of the flavor of the week right now, his Wrecking Ball is nothing to laugh at, and he came up in the very, very old days playing Diva. So we know at the very least he has those 3 key heroes that he is very, very proficient on. And if the meta will continue to favor those 3 heroes in the next 6 months, a year, year and a half, Finzi is certainly up there in consideration for one of the better off tanks in the West right now. So, right, I mean, Karasuno have some great pieces on hand. They need to just make sure that they can keep that refined and play well under pressure if they want to hold up against the big boys.
They do. Of course, it doesn't end here for Karasuno. They will be moving up into Contenders, where, of course, the big boys are currently playing. It suddenly gets a lot trickier to manage, because obviously the level of play at Contenders should theoretically be that bit higher than Open Division and Trials. So we're going to be looking to see if Karasuno can keep up this level of pressure as they move into the next round of play. I'm certainly going to be watching this with bated breath to see how they manage it.
Right. I mean, they've consistently been a team that's kind of bounced back and forth between those tiers of play, between Contenders and Contenders Trials. But this could be, as their product is refined, this could be the beginning of something where they start to hold on to that spot a little more consistently, where they start to climb a little bit higher as they reach Contenders, approaching those quarterfinals, semifinals style spots, or even pulling off some upsets and making it all the way to the end of the bracket. Depending on how the format of the bracket looks next month, I suppose there may or may not be some iterations coming. We frankly have no clue. But Karasuno could make a case.
We've been told that there may be some changes coming in August. We don't know quite what those look like. But guys, I do believe that's all we've got time for in Contenders Trials here today. It's been an interesting day in NA Contenders Trials. Certainly not the end to the season that we've been looking for, but I think in terms of games to round out the season here in August, I think it's been genuinely quite an entertaining set of games, even if it hasn't gone the way that Revival maybe would have liked.
Yeah, I mean, throughout the week, I think we got some very close games, lots of map 5s, lots of close 3-1 scores. I mean, I don't think that Contenders and Trials have ever been so close together.
No.
And that always makes for some very interesting standings at the end of the day when all the dust has settled. So keep tuning in. I'm sure you're going to see lots more of that in Contenders and lots more next month when Trials gets back underway.
That's right. But that's going to be the end of our Contenders Trials NA coverage for this month. Expect us to be back ready for NA next month when that rolls around. But from myself and Thibble, and of course all the wonderful folks here behind the scenes, keeping all the tech rolling and keeping all the organization organized, that is going to be a goodbye and a good night. And we hope to catch you at the next Elo Hell broadcast. Good night and take care, everybody.
Bye all.
Big! Uprising Academy, they lay down the shatter, let the bodies hit the floor. Uprising Academy at 95%.
Right now with Hydra building up to this Bear Barrage so quickly.
Oh!
And asking!
Double kill in the back with the pulse bomb from the high ground. Aerial assault with that mine.
Impact, se escucha de abajo gritar campeón a Sky Foxes.
Holy cow.
And after 42 consecutive losses, the Shanghai Dragons get their first win.
8 teams enter this weekend.
Oh no, Reinhardt, what are you doing?
We got a clip with minimal information. It's time to break it down. Speed, 25%. Go. Figure out what this man's SR is.
Keep fighting till it's for sure lost. Winnable!